good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. Welcome to the weekly assignment, where executive producer Sam Osterhout and I talk to you about what's coming up this week on Lincoln Square, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Hey, Sam, how's your week?
Hey, how you doing? You
Good.
almost called it the weekend. Like we're still
Yeah,
in weekend.
yeah, exactly.
After
It's been a long break. We've both gotten, I've gotten snow. You might be getting snow.
Yep.
So we kind of have that holiday brain going on.
It's total holiday brain. Yeah, it's funny. Usually December in an off season is kind of a nothing burger for news, but not this year.
No, not with every day there being something like, blowing up boats in Venezuela, maybe going to war, on and on. But I'm really excited that we're going to have Trygve Olson on. I think we've got a photo of him. You know him. He writes for us regularly on Lincoln Square. He's a founding director with the Lincoln Project and has been in like 30 countries working on elections and fighting for democracy. So good person to bring on as the midterms are barreling ahead.
Yes. Yeah, the perfect guy. He's also among those 30 countries. He's been in Wisconsin,
which is a country in and of itself.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Every time I talk to him, I went to grad school in Minnesota. I want to go to a bar with him and play pull tabs and have pickled eggs and
nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Nothing like Wisconsin bars.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm from Chicago, and my dad would always tell me about how they would always go up to Wisconsin when the drinking age was still 19. So fond memories for him during his college days.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think we have some good news that we can talk about, which is rare. There have been stories percolating in Punchbowl and other media that we are about to see a massive wave of Republican retirements. And this would be pretty unprecedented because Republicans tend to be pretty disciplined about such things. And they have such a narrow majority in the House that, this could really be destabilizing. Obviously, we know Marjorie Taylor Greene is stepping down. Over the weekend, Troy Nehls, from Texas, said he was leaving. A lot of these folks are from strong Republican districts, but that's not a guarantee of success anymore, because tomorrow there's a special congressional election in Tennessee, where Trump won that district by, I think, 20 points back in 24, but the Democrat Afton Bain is running neck and neck with Matt Van Epps, the Republican. And things are definitely getting scary for them. You see Trump has, intervened, and he's saying that Afton hates Christianity. You got to vote against her. You've got him doing a tele-rally with Mike Johnson. So it's really given desperation there for Republicans. But big picture, let's talk about it. Is it possible that we could even see the House change hands before the midterms?
Well, I think that's an enticing thought, and I don't think it's impossible. I'm really excited to get Trygve's input on that when he comes in. But I think that there are a couple of things that I think are even bigger than just the midterms about this, and it's the sort of it's the lack of leadership at the top for the party. It's the ignoring of Congress and congressional members of the caucus. It's the the mismanagement of critical funds and policy making and all of these things that are so destabilizing for that party that even, like you said, in Tennessee, in ruby red districts, the Democrats are giving them a real run for their money. And I think that, a lot of the Republicans are seeing the writing on the wall. So, do they stick around? Do they run a tight race against Democrats when some of them have never run a competitive election or, been in a competitive election in their entire
At
lives?
least a general election.
No, not a general.
Yeah.
Or do they get primaried from the right by some crazy person? Do they, how, I think at some point, we've wondered for the last 10 years, like, where's bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Will there be a point where Republicans in the House and Senate and, elected officials all across state houses even say, geez, this is too much?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think there's a really interesting dynamic going on because we've seen for the last 10 years that Republicans have just been in lockstep with Trump. And if you're not, you know what happens to you. You're probably not still in Congress.
Right.
But I think the dynamic that has developed this year is really fascinating because you've seen Trump just kind of go it alone on most policies, just, ruling by fiat, by executive order, and not really involving Congress for too much besides, the budget bill, which of course is vastly unpopular.
Yep.
The government shutdown was not great for Republicans if you look at the polling. And you have Republicans who they're not even getting credit for doing anything good. They can't really go back to their district and be like, hey, I just brought you all these jobs or, this big bridge project in your district.
Right.
I still see Republicans like Nancy Mace is still dining out on the, Biden era stuff, from like 2021, and 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act. And she's still saying, even though she voted against all that,
right,
she's still saying, hey, I'm bringing home the bacon for South Carolina. Trump's not really offering them that, but yet they're going to be the ones to pay the price for like all of his bad decisions in 2026. At least that's what the trajectory is. And I can see how that is becoming a less appealing prospect for Republicans. And there's so much money to be made outside of Congress, whether it's with like Fox News contracts or go work for Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any one of the billionaire trillionaires. Why would you want to stay there, maybe get your ass kicked in a safe Republican seat and have people hate you at town halls?
I mean, well, and, there's a couple things as well. And that is, people like Mark Wayne Mullen in Colorado or in Oklahoma, running on trans athletes and banning, trans men from women's sport, the whole thing. At some point, your constituents are like, I don't understand how this affects my ability to pay my energy bill. Mm-hmm. Right. I hate those people. Great. I'm super racist or whatever I am. I don't, I have all these crazy biases and I get real steamed up on Facebook. However, I'm coming up short this month and it's Christmas and all of this stuff. And I think,
my landlord doesn't take hate for rent.
No, he doesn't. Some maybe do. I don't know. But I think, there's that, the stat or, the sort of survey question where they say, how is the country headed in the right direction financially? Like how's the economy and how are you doing? And when Biden's in office, the economy sucks, but you're doing great, And once that flips, and it seems to be flipping, that the Republicans say, well, the economy's steaming, it's great.
Right. We're not showing any of the data, so just believe us.
Yeah. But me personally, I'm not doing so hot right now. Mm-hmm. And when that rubber hits the road, it's a tough thing. And, I think in some ways, a Republican route, just getting routed in 26 could be the best thing that ever happened to the Republicans long term. They have to change.
Absolutely. And you're starting to see some pushback. And I know we're definitely going to cover what's going on in the Caribbean. Bobby Jones will be focusing on that this week. I'm sure Stuart Stevens and Simon Rosenberg today will.
Yep.
But there were some green shoots of hope where some Republican senators, were saying, hey, maybe we need some oversight over Pete Hegseth just wantonly killing people, without a formal declaration of war or strategy or ethics. So we'll have to see. A lot of times we see people make statements, and then once the pressure hits from the White House and threats from MAGA land, those disappear. But there does seem to be a growing unease, especially because if you look at Trump's numbers, he's not doing well. And it's always a lot easier to buck someone when their approval ratings are like heading deep into the 30s.
Well, yeah, and I think Trump has this mastery of deploying the carrot and the stick with his base, and at this point, the stick is like a primary, or I don't know what else it could be. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. And the carrot is favors and personal enrichment, and all of the and glowing praise, but I don't know that any of it really matters anymore when your numbers are so in the tank.
Yeah.
Who primary me? I don't care. Like, and that's there's power in quitting, right? There's power in saying I opt out.
Yeah.
Not to give the Republicans too much credit, because they're still here.
Right.
But
yeah. Well, I think this is probably a good time for us to bring in Trygve, because I know he spends all day going through the numbers, and we just had a piece over the weekend from our good friend Brian Datesman with The Intellectualist about the latest Gallup polling. I think we've got that. But I mean, this kind of follows the trend line. We're seeing that Trump's numbers are kind of heading towards record lows. So Trygve, tell us what's going on here. Are we finally seeing the fever break? Is there some reason to hope?
Is there reason? You're talking about a person who literally writes a Substack column called "Searching for Hope." So there you go. Yeah. I mean, there's as John McCain, my old boss, used to say, "Hope dies before it goes totally black." So, um, but yeah. I mean, so the 36% he's at in Gallup, his all-time low in the first or second term that he's served is 35. Um, the erosion is not necessarily uniform across states, right? And so, people who do what I do spend a lot of time looking at like correlations and coefficients between vote totals in 2024. This is probably down in the weeds, but maybe listeners will be interested in
go to
this.
the weeds.
But the coefficient is and correlation is how much our numbers moving in unison relative to each other. So in purple states, which any of the people who've heard me on previous shows or read my Substack will know, are Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and I don't think I'm forgetting North Carolina. He's down. He's at the correlation is about 0.8 in those states. So from where he was in 2024, so it means those states that he won by 2-3% are now states where he would be losing 7-8%. Clearly, that's not good. But what's also true in the numbers is he's down further in places like New York, California, bigger states where it has an impact. What's interesting to me, just sort of looking at this, clearly if the elections were held today, Republicans would get shellacked. And, the best tell of that is less poll numbers. It's what you guys were alluding to before I came on, which is when you see one party's members start to head for the exits, that is typically a sign that that things are not looking good. And to some degree, those kinds of indicators are more important probably at this stage of the cycle than what the poll numbers say. Poll numbers go up, poll numbers go down. But the overall trajectory is not good for Trump. And quite frankly, I think I was one of the people, we saw things in the numbers that I was doing with Lincoln Democracy Institute in early 2023. Half of Americans thought Joe Biden, it wasn't that they thought he was too old. They had personal reference. They had concluded that he was like mom or dad, aging parent
Mm.
who needed to have the car keys taken away. And people didn't want to hear it, and the political world tried to spin it. Oh, he's just old. I think there's some of that going on with Trump too. Like
Yeah.
people put it in the frame of reference of what they know. Um,
Mm.
so, but I mean, the part of me that spent, you talked about the part of my career where I worked for McCain and around the world with, fighting autocrats. You're also we're in the game we're in, not the game we know. And so, you know, at the end of the day, people ask me all the time, what if the elections aren't free and fair? Bottom line is, I've seen that around the world. The way you fix that, since we're not on the radio, I can say this: you just go out and kick their ass. And certainly, it appears that there is that potential. So.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Trygve, you've spent time in so many countries abroad trying to make sure that they had free and fair elections. Did did you ever think that you would be in this sort of fight back home?
You know, Susan, that's a question. That's a great question. Um, when I worked around the world with Belarusians, Russians, Ukrainians, Nigerians, all these places, the tagline is 40 countries on 5 continents. Um, I used to, I developed a little bit of a reputation because Alexander Lukashenko declared me an enemy of the Belarusian state, and I got booted from Russia in a speech in the Duma. Um, I used to, so I had a little bit of a reputation. I would go to these places, and I remember being somewhere in the Middle East working with some students, were most of the people I worked with, and I was looking out on the group, and I had done my shtick so many times I could do it in my sleep. And this younger woman came up to me and she said, "You're so brave to come here and work with us." And I'm standing up there starting my song and dance and my greatest hits, if you will. And I remember looking out on the crowd, and they were just kids. Um, and I remember thinking to myself, I would always think two things. One, I would think, I wonder if I would be brave enough if I were in their circumstances to be coming to something like this, where in some cases they were risking being thrown in jail even for coming and, working with me. And then I would think to myself, these kids are heroes. Like for all of the talk we have of heroes, this is a heroic act. I never believed that I would be there. I mean, when people would say you're a hero, I'd think I get to go back to Lithuania, like, or the United States. Like, I'm not risking anything. I think the part of the experience for me that's unique, having worked in all those places and spent all these times with people, and I never understood it until I've lived it here, is they would say you never know who are going to be the people who stand up and who are the people who aren't until you're tested. And in fact, my wife, who stood up to Soviet tanks at 19 as a freshman in college, had made that point to me in the past. And that's been the piece that's been the hardest, like I think about the people that I knew in Republican politics who named their kid Reagan or Thatcher as like some sort of virtue signaling, and have gone along with Trump, and in some cases
Mm.
are, prominent prominent media people defending it. And I know what they've said in private, what they used to say in private. That's the piece that's the hardest, and I could never really relate to that experience of those who have fought for democracy until I had to live it myself. And it's part of the reason why, there's more to it, but it's part of the reason why I'm like, I got to the point, and I had to kind of start a Substack, but and you guys know I'm not a huge public eye guy, but I started writing on Substack, and I was like, you know what? It's hope is what people need, because what we're really in here is a battle between people of fear of each other and faith in each other, and it really is about far more than just politics and elections. It's about who are we as humans, and who are we as Americans, just as it is in any place, you know.
We've talked about for 5 years the sort of global spread of autocracy, and obviously it's been happening, on a spectrum for decades. Where do you see that battle now? It feels like, to some degree, the normalizing of, our American style fascism and Putin style fascism gives people like Xi some wiggle room, to be a strong, benevolent, autocratic leader. Are we losing this battle globally?
Um, I mean, the easy answer would be to throw de Tocqueville back at you and say democracy is like a rising tide; it only recoils to come back with greater force. I think there's some truth to that. I am also somebody who, I go through phases in what I read. I actually listen to audiobooks now rather than read, but and I went through a phase fairly recently where I was reading, and I wrote about this on Substack, I think. I went through a phase where I was reading everything I could about like Carnegie and the Industrial Revolution. There's a great book for people who haven't read it by Andrew Ross Sorkin called 1929, kind of trying to understand like how the Industrial Revolution played out in the post-industrial revolution, because the truth of the matter is we're in the middle of something that's that transformational. And as you guys know, listeners may not know, I hope you guys will invite me back. There's some exciting news. I've spent the last 2 years taking online courses and courses at Vanderbilt and other places on AI, and trying to figure that out and integrate it into what we're doing. That change is bigger than any of us recognize. I mean, I think people are starting to recognize how big AI can be, but it really gets back to those kinds of transitions, the Industrial Revolution, what we're seeing with the internet, and ultimately AI. They ultimately come down to a question of whether it's going to empower, these tools are going to empower everyone for the good of humanity, or are they going to exploit everyone to the benefit of a few? And at some level, far deeper than our politics is a manifestation of it. But at a foundational level, what's really going on is a major transition in humanity and how humanity interacts with each other and the world in which we're in. I mean, you're talking about tools. The head of Anthropic came out just the other day and said all software engineering and coding by 2026 is going to be done by AI, most of it.
I
Well,
saw
that's
that.
a massive transition of just the world. I mean, think about it. Kids who went to college 10 years ago were like, I'll become a software engineer and I'll have a $150,000, $200,000 a year job. Those jobs are going to be gone, right?
God.
So that's unnerving, and that impacts our politics. And you have people who are now worth $500 billion who are benefiting from that. And, so that and that's playing out in our politics too. And then you couple it with people, you know, one of the biggest lessons I learned from my work overseas, few things are as dangerous to humanity as aging autocrats, because their entire strategy for gaining and maintaining power is demonstrating inevitability and invincibility. And as you
Right.
get old, you become less inevitable and less invincible. And to a degree, um, I think we're seeing that play out too. And so, but I don't want to be all like, you know, I don't want to be all like Debbie Downer here. Where I see hope in all of that is, it's a cycle. There are laws of political physics, and we're in that cycle. And I think you're seeing Trump to a degree run the cycle too.
Right.
It's just different this time because we're in a different game.
Yeah. Well, on the subject of hope, I think you write so powerfully about how we can communicate with people that we disagree with, especially people in our own lives, our friends, our family, maybe people that we have become estranged from during the last decade, which I think is something we hear from all of you, our viewers a lot, because this is something that affects us at such a deep level. And I loved the column that you wrote right before Thanksgiving that we published as well. Um, I think what is really useful about all of your writing is that you break it down into clear steps, things that we can do, because whether you're writing about AI or the fight for democracy, these are such heavy topics and it's so easy to feel overwhelmed. And I think it's really helpful for all of us to read some concrete things that we can all do in our everyday lives. And I was just wondering if you could talk with us a little bit, because I know you've had interactions with people over the years, and that's really kind of driven you to write some of these pieces about how we can keep these lines of communication open.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Susan. You know, the I alluded to this in the story about Thanksgiving. First of all, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and it's my favorite holiday from living abroad. And I allude to a story where I smuggled a turkey into Thanksgiving. I mean, into Lithuania once, which is a hilarious story. I'll save it for some other time. But I, the Poles asked me if I was allowed to take it into Lithuania. I said, I don't see what problem that is of yours. And the guy looked at me and was like, sure, okay, that makes sense. But anyway, uh, you know, so if we take a step back and we think about the big problem, right, that we're facing, and we saw this in the research early on. One in four Americans has ended a relationship with a family member that they care about, still care about, over politics. And we see it all the time. And 2 in 3 Americans are avoiding conversations with friends or family over politics. And that democracy will not work if at that most basic level you're seeing that kind of breakdown. And quite frankly, it's sad. And we were doing some focus groups in Detroit, trying to understand, dads and daughters where this has happened. And I'm a girl dad. And afterwards, this guy who'd been a homicide detective in Detroit for 30 years, big, tough guy, said he had been in the Marines, came up to me after, which has never really happened, and said, I need your help. And I could tell the guy was almost in tears. He's like, I get it now. I get it now. He's saying under his breath. And I was a little taken back, stoic Norwegian. But and I said, what can I do? And he said, I've lost my daughter. We got in a fight over Donald Trump, and I get it now. She was talking about me and my values, and I was talking about taxes. You've got to help me. What can I do? I've lost my daughter, my only daughter. And I was like, all I could think to myself is, first of all, like, I can't imagine not talking to my daughters for 3 days. Like, it's why my older one getting ready to go to college is just gutting me. And I know what it's like to lose a daughter. I call my it's searching for hope for a reason, because our first daughter was stillborn at 38 weeks, and I know what it's and her name was Hope for the future in Lithuanian. So I could relate to the guy, and I'm like, we have got to try and help the guy, and that sort of led to the AI and some tools that we have that are going to be coming out soon that people can use. But what is really true is what we're facing, and it is the game we're in. It's not going to be decided at the ballot box. Is the ballot box important? 100%, right? Like, that's going to be the manifestation of it. But this is going to be solved, as it is in all of these countries where I worked, around dinner tables and at the bar with your friends. And if people are afraid to have the conversation or don't know how to have the conversations, we're going to get nowhere. And I'll tell you, based on some of the responses that I've gotten both make me really have hope, and some of them just make me sad because there's people like, I don't want to talk to any of these people. My life's better off without them. The truth of the matter is that sounds like the mega people on the other side. And really what people are failing to recognize, it's not about what you're saying. It's about what the people are who you're talking to are hearing and how they're digesting it. And so we need to empower people by giving them the tools to have better understanding of how what they're saying is landing if we're going to fix this in places around the bar. And we have to have people be comfortable enough to know how to do that. And you don't shame people into changing their beliefs. People will only look back at the beliefs they held and hold shame. What you have to do is you need to be genuinely interested. You need to find common ground, and then you need to ask questions that have them going away seeing the cognitive dissonance between the values that they live in their daily life and what they're advocating for politically. And I think about a lady in my hometown, small town in Wisconsin, who helps run the food bank at the church. And a lot of the people who go to the food bank are immigrants, and she loves those people. And yet on Facebook, she's advocating for what ICE is doing. And I was interacting with her, not by lecturing her, but by saying, hey, what do you think about this? And I mean, I was lucky because she knows my background and whatever, and I had some stature, but I was genuinely curious, trying to get her to think, like there's a lady just like her somewhere in Chicago who runs a food bank in Chicago who's seeing her friends rounded up, people who come to her food bank, right? Like, you have to do that, and you have to hold hope. You can't just say, you know what, screw them. I don't want anything to do with them. Because if you do that, Donald Trump is winning when you do that.
Yeah, I think about there's trolls online who love to be assholes, in the chat and all this kind of thing. But
Right.
by far and away, most people don't consider themselves assholes. They consider themselves part of a solution, right? And I think that, the guy who shot up the pizza place, you think he's crazy and he's what an idiot or whatever, but he was afraid that children were being abused. Of course, he wants to be part of that solution, right? And I think what you're saying is really powerful. We have to have empathy.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and social media, we've forgotten how to have those conversations, and and that's a function of those bigger societal changes that are going on. I mean, Sam, like, you think about your kids and my kids are the same age. The amount of time that they spend on their phone,
Crazy.
My older one, who I'm proud as can be, I won the biggest election of my life. I helped her win student body president. She refused to let me run geofenced ads attacking her opponent. She's like, Dad, we're not doing that. But the I got lectured pretty good. I'm like, how can we attack this guy? We're not attacking my opponent. We're running a positive campaign. I'm like, you sound like every other candidate I've ever worked for. We're throwing that out the window. Anyway, she was smarter than I was. But they don't call each other on the phone. Occasionally they'll WhatsApp, but it's far more texting and impersonal, and yet what we're facing requires a level of looking people in the eye and trying to find understanding. I mean, the genius of the guys who got together in Philadelphia, and they were white rich guys basically, but the genius of democracy is we're going to find a better way for humanity. To that point, power was derived by who, on the streets. And they said, we're going to wrap it. Power is always zero sum, but we're going to wrap it in all these checks and balances and Schoolhouse Rock. And that requires people actually sitting down. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are called the Great Compromise. But we're losing that. And that ultimately comes back to being able to have understanding with each other, and Sam, to your point, empathy for others' plights that you don't know. You can't just have empathy for the people that are coming into your food bank. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have empathy for the people who come into your food bank and others. And it's so easy to get trapped in the slogans, you know.
Mm-hmm.
3 strikes and you're out, or lock them up and throw away the key. I mean, I think about my mom, bless her heart. Like, she was all lock them up and throw away the key until one of her favorite students got caught up running a Ponzi scheme, and she's like, but he's a good kid. He's never going to get an opportunity for reciprocity. I'm like, because you advocated for policies like that.
Mm.
People don't want to hear that. I mean, that was a fight. When I would ask her questions about it, that was a different deal. But you know, it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it isn't easy. You're sitting at Thanksgiving and you're just like, it's like Sam getting going about the Vikings or something.
We won't even
And
go
don't
there.
even get me started on the Bears, Susan.
No, okay, because
You're a
you know
Lions fan.
I know you are a long-suffering Green Bay fan, and I have that residual
I'm an
Chicago
owner.
pride.
I'm an owner.
Yeah,
You don't get
well,
NFL owners often on your shows.
there you go. Well, we'll have to talk about next time how we can respectfully argue over football.
Yeah.
That will be a much bigger conversation.
Maybe there's an app for that.
But yeah, we'll definitely want you to come back, and when you're launching your new venture with the Lincoln Democracy Institute, I think that would be great for us to share with everyone. Really looking forward to that. And thanks, Trygve. We always love hearing from you here on Lincoln Square.
Yeah, anytime. Anytime. I'm happy to come on. So
Awesome.
I was
Thanks,
happy you
Trig.
guys asked. So just let me know.
Great.
Thanks, bud. See you soon.
For thanks for promoting my stuff, and for all the people who are reading it. You know, I know I'm a little intermittent, which is the reason why it's, you know, my pieces, you know, they're out there for people to read. So
And they're great. People
Yeah.
love them. So keep them coming at your own clip.
I will.
Maybe.
Great. Thank you. Well, Sam, are we hearing very much in the chat? I know you're always in there.
I'm looking. Yeah, I mean, our chat is the best chat. We've got the best chat. I love these guys. Persephone Scissorhands, thank you for joining. She says, thanks for the conversation. Patrick is in making jokes and talking about the Vikings as usual. Hey, Patrick. Yeah, it's a good chat. It's going to be a good month for chat. I feel like December is always like a little lighter.
Mm-hmm.
You can, I don't know, there's some perspective that comes from end of the year kind of stuff. It's
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of feels like we might have kind of like that 2017 vibe going on, you know, when Doug Jones pulled out the Alabama Senate race.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
We'll keep our eye on tomorrow with the special election in Tennessee. And,
Yeah.
and Doug Jones is now running for governor of Alabama. So
yeah,
hopefully we can have him on again soon.
Yeah. Have him on with Trippy. That would be great.
Yeah, they're always great together.
So good.
Well, yeah, coming up this week, actually later on today, we'll have Stuart Stevens on with Simon Rosenberg, and they're always great together.
So fun.
Can't wait to hear their take on what's going on, both with all the revelations about our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, what's going on for the 2026 midterms, because Simon always has his finger on the pulse of what's going on with the Democrats.
Yeah, he's so good at that, and I really love him and Stuart together. They're really wonderful. We've got who else? Edwin is back. He took a little break. He's back for a couple shows this week.
Yeah, he's going to have on Apswan Supsang, who he used to write for the Daily Beast. He now writes for Rolling Stone. Really incredible work on politics. So that'll be great on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. On It's the Democracy Stupid, and looking forward to chatting with him for the first time in a couple weeks tomorrow.
Yeah.
At 11 a.m. Eastern, right here.
Yeah, those are great, great conversations. And Bobby Jones will break down Venezuela tomorrow night. He is hot on that.
Yes.
We've been texting back and forth all weekend. There's really, really a lot to talk about. And for our call to action today, we have
our weekly assignment is brought to you by Sam.
Brought to you by me. Look, it is December. It is the time to take stock in the year and look back and look forward and evaluate where we've come and all of these things. My weekly column, Winners and Losers, last week was the first round of Loser of the Year award. This week is the second round. You guys decide who is the Loser of the Year. This is the second and last round. So, by the way, last week, RFK is kind of running away with it. So we'll see if any of these guys, Mark Wayne and Johnson and Russell Vogt, can keep up with RFK. But check it out. You can vote in the comments, and if you want to write a reason why you think your loser is the worst or best loser, then put that. I want to include some of your comments in next week's post where we announce the winner. And then after that, after next week, we will do winner of the year. And
we'll leave it on a high note.
If you have ideas for who I should include in that, let me know, because
that's a harder one.
It is. It's a little harder. You can't kick a football without hitting a loser in this place, but the winners are there.
And very important, you have to be a paid subscriber to vote. And so you also, this is a feature, Winners and Losers, that is just for our weekly subscribers. The vast majority of what we do here, we try and keep free, no paywall, because that's part of what we're doing. We want to reach as many people as possible as in our fight for democracy. But at the same time, we also are trying to keep the lights on, and we appreciate your support. So now would be a great time to upgrade and to become a paid subscriber. We had a special running over the weekend for Black Friday, Small Business Saturday. But really, I think you'll find that it's when you become a paid subscriber, like, you get to participate in little fun things like this. You get to see strategy session every week with Joe Trippi and Rick Wilson and Stuart Stevens, kind of those behind the scenes conversations. So, we really appreciate your support. And if you've been thinking about it, or if you're just joining us today, really, you're going to want to vote. I mean, who doesn't want a piece of this contest of the biggest loser?
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Kevin Godby on watching on Facebook says, wondering which chat you were referring to. It's on our Substack chat, and I'll show you the post again. So if you go to Lincoln Square at Substack, you can find the post there, and the comments of that post.
Definitely there, because unfortunately we don't get to see these chats beyond the live chat right now. They're not saved anywhere, and so if you put your vote there, we won't be able to see it. So and it'll be preserved for posterity if you put it there at the end of the article
for all to see forever and ever.
Well, great. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Start brainstorming those winners. Who do you feel like was a real champion for democracy and for the fight we're all in? Who can give us hope in the new year? All good things.
Yeah, that's it.
Great.
Wonderful. Great conversation, Susan, as always.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a great week.